talk about fighter jets, particularly American fighter jets, Israeli fighter jets, and the aerial vehicles generally. You see, when you talk about fighter jets, you are talking particularly about manned flying systems. The unmanned equivalent is what you call UCAVs, unmanned systems, which do not have pilots. Now, there are important differences between the two systems, the manned fighter jets and the unmanned drones. The unmanned systems are usually called drones. But the word drone actually means a lot of things. It means much more than drones that are flying. For example, there are also drones that actually go on water, drone boats, but that is another issue entirely. Let's talk about the stuff that flies at this time. Now, manned fighter jets usually have pilots, human pilots. For the most modern fighter jets, the pilots are usually one. That single pilot is actually the personnel that essentially what you can call drives the fighter jet. Is also essentially the personnel that fires the weapons of the fighter jets and also interdicts weapons that are fired at it to try to take it down. However, in the past, fighter jets could take in as many as two personnel, and in that case, particularly in the case of the F-15, the American F-15, it can take in a pilot. The pilot is the one that flies the plane, while it also takes in another personnel that they call a WSO, who sits in a seat behind the pilot, weapon support officer. That is actually the guy that mans the guns, that mans the missiles, that does the shooting, while the pilot focuses on the on the flying of the fighter jet. However, the F-15 is a relatively dated system compared, for example, to the F-25, to the F-35 and the F-22, which are much more modern, much more recent American fighter jets and have only one single pilot. Now, drones, as you know, do not, they don't feature any human element at all. They are completely remote control, and they can be remote controlled as far as from the Middle East to Nevada in the US. That is the beauty of wireless telecommunications. That is the beauty of satellite navigation. The drone operator need not be anywhere near the theater of war. You must note that. Now, there are pros and cons to fighter jets and drones. Drones are able to fly at much lower altitude, largely because when a drone is when a drone is shot down by adversaries, by enemies, you do not lose any human. There is no parent that will come and cry on your neck. There is no wife who has lost his or her husband. There is no husband who has lost his or her wife. There are no children who have lost their daddies or mummies, when it comes to drones. But fighter jets tend to operate at much higher altitudes. Why? So that the fighters can stay relatively safe. The higher the altitude, the more difficult it is expected, that enemy adversaries will be able to shoot the systems down. That is one important thing you must note. So because of that, in this Iran-Iraq war, Iran has successfully shot down by far more unmanned drones compared to fighter jets. For example, as at current count, Iran has shot down close to 150 Israeli and American drone systems. We have the Heron, we have the Predator systems, we have the Triton systems, we have the Hermes systems, all sorts of. In fact, we have the Orbiter systems, all sorts of drone systems, all sorts of generations. Close to 150 now, Iran has successfully shot down. Again, don't forget, they fly at much lower altitudes. They are able to see closer because the human element is not there. Nobody is going to die. Only drones essentially would drive, which costs money. They can cost quite some money, tens of millions of dollars. But at least you cannot put money and compare that to human lives. But when it comes to fighter jets, Iran has performed surprisingly well, in this war. Unusually well, particularly when it comes to taking out American fighter jets. In fact, Iran has done what has never been done before. because Iran has successfully shot down, American fighter jets that have never been shot down before in history. For example, Iran has downed F-15s. Iran has downed F-15. There is at least one or two American F-15s that have been downed in or close to Iranian territory, apart from 3 F-15s that were downed by a Kuwaiti operator, according to the Americans, of an American Patriot system, who shot down 3 F-15s in a 4 Gulf War incident over Kuwaiti, Iraqi territory. That makes close to 4 to 5 F-15s. And prior to this time, an F-15 has never been shot down before. Beyond that, Iran has also shot down an FA-18 Hornets system, although that one has been shot down before by the Houthis, sometimes about 1.5 to 2 years ago, when the Americans brought their aircraft carrier to Houthi territory and came to fight them and try to subdue them on behalf of Israel. So Iran just took down an FA-18 Hornets multi-role fighter jet. But the shock of it all was that Iran recently successfully downed an F-35, which is what I can describe as a miracle of physics. A miracle of physics. A miracle of physics. Taking down, successfully targeting and landing offensive, an offensive anti-aircraft missile on an F-35. In fact, do you know what we are going to do? We are going to dedicate an entire video, the very next video, to discussing how Iran successfully downed, shot at the F-35 and thereby, created what we will call a miracle of physics. Very quickly, see you in the next video. Thank you very much.